Ready? Sean, ready?
Ready.
All right. We'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. We'll go ahead with the roll call, please.
Ryan Green.
Here.
Jesse Koppel.
Here.
Ben Lee. Steve Dyer.
Here.
Kristen Hurst.
All right. Do we need to elect a chair for just tonight?
I'll make a motion to appoint Ryan as our acting chair tonight.
I'll second it.
All right.
Aye. All right. We'll go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move into public comment that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you are one of tonight's applicants, this is not the time to speak unless you would like to comment on other matters happening in Johnstown.
Mr. Chairman, Teresa did purchase, and I don't know if you want to use it tonight or not. The stop,
Oh.
if that's part of your procedure. I know council had done that, but it's up to you all.
I don't know that we technically adopted that yet. Did
That's
we
fine.
have, did we?
Council had, so I didn't know.
If you want to put a time limit on it, I can keep time.
Yeah, we'll go with our traditional council rules of 3 minutes. We'll have Teresa keep the time. I want to talk in rules committee to make sure we need to, if there's anything we officially need to do with that. We'll go ahead and do that. And first, we will bring up Marvin Block.
Can I speak for myself?
Sure. I think we can hear you on the microphone. Jesse, if you want to run the microphone.
I don't know that it'll reach, but you can try.
I was gonna say, he might be close enough.
Maybe.
Maybe you might, just, I don't know.
That's why I don't know if it'll go all the way, but we can make it, we'll just get it.
Point it at him.
Yeah, just point it in his direction.
I think it'll be fine.
I come to speak, I come in and informally talk to the zoning man there, and about 2 lots that I own here in town, just make one application. The one's at 63 West College, and the other one is at 49 East Maple. And Sean turned it over to Trevor, and I got an email back saying that I couldn't put residence on those lots. The zoning was changed on that in January of 2023. And I wasn't notified of the zoning change or anything. That lot that I'm talking about on College Street, it's a small lot, it's 60 by 60. Wanted to put a house on it for my daughter. That has been, trailer's been on that lot since 1950, 74 years. And I'm told I can't put a house on the lot. But in reading your restrictions and things here, if you go to your new zoning, and go to the GCC 1, it goes down in there, and then under D3, it gives you all the different businesses and things, and then it says, General District 1, subject to the requirements of section 114102. When you go to 114102, it says zoning districts, the residential districts are intended to provide land for 1 and 2 family houses, dwellings, land use which not related to the desire for residential environment are permitted. There's nothing else within 1,200 foot of that lot that is a business. Everything in the neighborhood is residential. The closest business is up beauty shop on the next corner up there, and the body shop. And I think that I have the right to put a house on the lot. If I can't put a house on the lot, if you guys rule against that, I'll just fix the trailer up. I was trying to improve it for the village. If I can't improve it, I'll fix the trailer up. It sits on the lot, it's been there 75 years.
And that's on the lot on College.
Yes,
And then, did you have a project you were trying to get approved on Maple?
I haven't asked for anything on
No,
it.
okay, okay,
But,
I heard you mention
According
it.
to the book that you got now, I can put a business in there, put apartments over it.
All right. Trevor and Sean, do you have anything on this, or can we follow up, or?
Do we know that there's a zone change in 2023, like a unilateral zone?
The ordinances were changed, the zoning map was not changed. It was a GCC 1 amendment that the city adopted last year. Mr. Black's correct.
So
But it did not change the zoning map. The zoning remains
the
unchanged.
permitted uses changed under GCC 1.
Correct.
yeah.
The allowable uses within GCC 1.
And and it eliminated residential when the change, do you know what the change was? That,
I don't know that it eliminated residential.
I don't know that it eliminated residential. The information that I passed forward to Mr. Block was that residential is only allowed as a conditional use, meaning it would have to come before this board and the city council. The existing trailer that's there is just a non-conforming residential use. As it's been
Grandfathered.
for many years.
Okay. It'd be hard to believe they eliminated residential in GCC 1 with the amount of houses that are in there currently.
Yeah, I can't comment on that. I wasn't part of that change.
All right, is there a follow-up? Can you follow up with Mr. Block and make sure that all questions are answered and?
I can certainly, Mr. Block, if you'd like to stay, or we can speak afterwards if you'd like, but I would need a little bit more direction from you before I can give you any additional information.
Well, I would rather err at the public.
Sure.
I don't trust private leaders. Not you, just
Fair enough.
I always come after loser on a private leader.
and I think part of that change that it's so I don't think that sounds like an insurmountable obstacle to bring that idea before the board if it's in a residential neighborhood and it meets, the general qualifications that, and it's an upgrade,
When you changed it in 2023, January 2023, you didn't notify me or anybody else. Now, if I want to put a house on it, I've got to send registered letters to all the neighbors and everybody else and come before you for hearings and things. That doesn't seem like it's fair to me, but we'll talk about it another day, I guess.
I'd have to check and see what exactly we changed in GCC 1, because I don't think that we took housing out of GCC 1. Now, there may have been an amendment in our code that day, but it could have been for another section of that. So I would have to see what exactly we amended on that date that you're referencing.
we've done so many updates that.
Yeah, we have been updating the code, so it may not have been that. It may have been
I thought our
something
emphasis
else.
was to make it more residential. when
So
we
I
did
would,
that.
I would want to make that clear of what we amended on that date.
That's a good point. If we can get some clarification on that, it might help, but, all right.
I mean, and obviously, with ownership of the lot, you're entitled to what you're grandfathered in as whatever you purchase that lot with, unless you're gonna do a new project.
Well, the city of Johnstown has recognized that as a residential lot for 75 years. They have had water and sewage on it. We've been collecting the taxes on it, and they collected the taxes on people that live there. So how can you take that away from them?
How does that, what's the threshold on, like, if there's an existing house there, what constitutes an improvement or a totally, like, new build? Like, do we have,
There's areas in the ordinance that reference, basically what you're looking at, it's a non-conforming use. So if something is operating in a district that's no longer allowed, it's allowed to operate there, but it's a non-conforming use. And so if there's an expansion or a structural, an alteration, and it defines that in our ordinances,
so a structural type of?
expansion, there's a variety, and I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the test that we go by to say, okay, as long as it's a non-conforming use, it hasn't changed, it continues to operate in that, no harm, it can continue to do that into perpetuity, but as soon as it changes enough to trigger one of these exceptions, then it has to come before the board. There's a couple options that you could go through at that point, but like I said, it's a non-conforming use. I did pull up, and what we'll do is have Teresa pull up the ordinances over the last couple of years to see, what it was back in 2018.
I have it. here, Sean.
22.
The strike-through underline version that was adopted in January of 23. I can pull it up, sure.
Okay.
Because I don't think the residential part
And
changed
then-
at all.
But basically, long and short, the code was not amended to add or remove residential. Residential in its current regulation.
Right.
Has been allowed since before 2023.
I think I've got what you want. I pulled up actually 2022, so I'll bring it up. And I'll go back to Mr. Chairman, if we can continue, or
Yeah.
whatever your flavor. There's the 2022 ordinance.
We've come this far, so now I want to know what we changed.
And I can
what
give
we
you a quick
changed, and
answer.
I want to
Yeah, just
path
do the quick
forward.
answer, just do the
now,
quick one.
Obviously, in light of tonight's meeting, we have applicants, things like that. But I want to identify what was changed, and I want to identify a path forward. And then
this
I'll have
is-
our staff proceed with Mr. Block accordingly.
So this is ordinance 25-2022, so looks like it was amended in 2022, GCC 1, Chapter 115. So I'm going to start all the way at the top. So purpose, permitted uses. So all the red are the changes, and all of the original with the strike-throughs is what has not been, what was allowed but is no longer allowed, and that is general merchandise, department stores, limited price, yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna let you kind of roll through them.
Right.
In here, I don't see residential as an allowable use unless it was missed in the Xeroxing of it, I'm not sure, but I'm literally pulling this off of our website, so. Camera, auto, tobacco, post office, newspaper, print, funeral, theater.
So if he got a conditional use then, and he wanted to rebuild it, his conditional use would carry over or no? It would be,
Well, the conditional
he'd have to
use-
reapply for it.
The conditional use is for the use itself. There would be generally a plan tied to it. There should be, like all conditional uses.
If he had a conditional use on the property, on the structure that was there now, would he have to reapply for that conditional use to put a new structure
If he
in?
was going to deviate from the existing,
Right.
approved plan, then yes, but if he was gonna replace something in kind, in my opinion, if everything's identical, you're replacing like for like under that conditional use permit.
So the same
that would be
use,
fine.
like for like use, but what if it's this?
Well, but there is no,
He
there is
just
no
needs to apply
conditional use
for
right now,
conditional
so
use
that-
and then move on.
Oh, the condition that his variance, or he would be, what would he need to get it approved? It'd be the conditional use, right?
Correct.
23.
So the use would be consistent.
So what do you
Would he have to
ask?
reapply if it was a different structure, I guess? Yes, okay.
So if I would recommend, and this is what I recommended to Mr. Block, is that if he would like to go that route to build a single-family home on either one of those lots, is to apply for the conditional use permit with the plan that he has in place for those homes. That, based on the code, that's the only direction forward
Right.
I can identify.
Right, because housing is a use that is in there in GCC 1.
So I'll go back to this. So
Right,
in
so-
2022, under this section right here, it does say that it was added, because it's in red, multiple family located on the second story or higher, and single-family units in accordance with SR1. So that requirement was actually added.
Right.
In 2022. Teresa's having me.
So you can build a house, but it needs to look like a house that's in our SR1 zoning district.
Well, and I think there's a little bit of interpretation there too, because I think you could interpret the code to mean that the lot has to meet SR1 requirements as well, not just the home itself. Because there are requirements in the code for like minimum square footage, as you know, and things
Right.
like that for the home itself, but for the lot, there are its own set of regulations. So the code doesn't specify, it just says meeting the requirements of the SR1 zoning district.
I think we met it. I think you can follow up.
Oh, 18-2020.
So that.
I just wanted to, so
looks
basically,
like
I
it's a-
wanted to show whether or not it was a use that can be done, because if it's a non-conforming use, he can't file for any sort of a permit or come to the city at all. If it's a permitted use, there's a process for this. He
And
needs to
if-
convey through the process
So that
with the
shows that
city
it was
and
a-
our staff.
There's a permit, that was
Get
the
his,
list of permitted.
get his
uses, right?
application and then come to this board for discussion.
Yes.
Okay,
That residence was there before we ever had zoning.
yours was. Okay. Those make it fun.
75 years. it's been.
My house has got zone GCC 1 too.
All right, so we've identified that it is a permitted use.
It's a
There is a-
It's a conditional use.
Right.
For GCC1.
Right, so there is a process for permitting.
Correct.
I want Mr. Block to convey through our staff, so there is a mechanism that he can get a permit, or he can get an application, come to the board, and proceed for approval on that.
I've already heard on the streets at the board that staff is against it. said I'd never be able to build on it.
That I don't know, but there is a mechanism to come forward with it that has to come to the board.
We don't listen to staff.
All right.
Or should you?
We've gotten off the rails here. So there is a mechanism to proceed that will end with you coming to a board to get approval or denial from a group of
I would
citizens.
just remodel what I've got.
You can go,
Same footprint.
Let's move on.
you can go either way, but there is a mechanism for you to get a permit and apply for everything, so we can do that. All right. We'll move on at this point to our next speaker slip, Dan Paul, zoning question for GCC 1 location.
All right.
Gentlemen, I'm here to bring up the question in regards to GCC 1. I'm looking to do a laundry service for Johnstown, considering that actually, after Marvin and I spoke, you guys really don't have any laundry services in Johnstown, and it's probably something that's needed in this location. So I started doing some research and some work on getting it done, and then I met with Chip. He owns 56 South Main Street and right there in downtown, right there, and realized that under GCC 1, there is a question as to whether I can do the laundry service there in that location or not. But I kind of went back and forth a little bit with Sean about it, but we do maybe see things a little bit differently. I don't know if you have a way to look at that
We have GCC 1 up
under category C.
and again, with this one, we're not gonna explore too far, but what I want to find out is it an approved use? Yes or no, and is there a mechanism for them to proceed forward with our staff?
That sounds good. So under C, I feel strongly that it does not have to include the things below it. It puts including, but it has a definition of what's called personal services involving the care of the person and his or her personal effects. Looked up the definition of personal effects, and definition of personal effects is a person's personal property, usually items of particular significance that are carried or worn. So to me, that's clothing. Right? I mean, that personal effects would be clothing. So what I'd like to do is provide a service of laundry service where people can drop off their laundry, get it laundered, and be able to pick it up at night, and also be able to do laundry service in the location too. Marvin mentioned to me that a lot of the horse farmers and stuff need this, and they're going outside of Johnstown to get it done. And so I'm willing to put a laundry service in at 56 South Main, but I need to make sure that you guys feel that under C, personal services, that laundry service would be under that category.
All right, and if this question gets too 50-50 or too into the weeds, I mean, I would advocate for someone to pursue a legal definition on it.
Did.
You did? Okay.
Have you guys made a staff decision yet for that, on that
So
application?
whenever an applicant comes in and they ask the question if it's a use, Terry usually takes it in, looks at it, permitted use, it's easy, checks the box. This one wasn't listed, so Terry came to me, did a little bit of research. GCC 2, there is the allowability of a dry cleaning service. So that's probably the most similar situation that we could reference, but we wanted to go a little bit further, so then we pulled up GCC 1. Personal services, our interpretation was whenever it listed personal consumptions, including, we went through the list. So this is our interpretation of it. And there is an appeal process. So if Terry were to deny an application based on the use not being permitted, there is an appeal process. The applicant can then come before the board. The board can then make a decision whether we are doing an interpretation correctly or not. However, went through these listed uses, and then we also pulled up, and this is where, whenever we kicked it over to legal, said, hey, can you give us some direction on this? Are we out in left field? Give us some background. So we pulled up some prior ordinances that were mentioned earlier as to when things changed, when it wasn't, what it was before. So in 2022, same ordinance that was referenced before. you'll see that
We removed it, yeah.
laundry and
Yeah, we just saw
laundromats was
that
removed.
before it
So,
was removed.
so that was the reasoning behind, if it was removed before, that's an indicator to us, the intent was to have it taken away. Now, if this board sees it differently, I am completely fine with that. We are just, Terry and myself are here to just enforce the rules that you give us. If you see a deviation from that, then you can ultimately make a decision, or council can make a decision to make it an allowable use again. But we don't have the authority in-house, knowing the information that we do. We did check it with legal, because we wanted to make sure that we're giving the right determination. So that's the background that I have, and I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
Well, I think that was probably one of your guys' questions is what's the path? Is there a path? So I didn't know that there is an appeal process, so it's not just a unilateral decision made by staff. So that gives you some comfort that,
Before I go through the time and effort of doing that, I wanted to kind of get a little bit of your idea as to what you believe personal effects is.
my question would be, I remember I was on the board when we made that change to remove the laundromat services, and it looks like, in retrospect, it might have been, we didn't effectively do that. If laundry services was a sub-item under that general category, under the old interpretation that it clearly was allowable and it fit under that category, would just removing the subcategory make it fall outside of that category? Did Yaz give you any direction on that, would be my question, because if I just read that from a legal standpoint, it seems like I would agree with the applicant. I realize our intent was to remove the laundromat, but it seems like we didn't do a very good job of making that of achieving that in the code by the plain language of it is I guess kind of.
So you're saying we should have put it under a non-permissive
We should have
use?
removed personal effects or put it under or some other,
So they did have personal effects that is.
because personal effects is
allowable.
probably.
Well,
like-
the other question is, did we strike that or did council strike that? Because ultimately, this is a board that makes recommendations to council. Council makes the final approval.
yeah, we
So
didn't
did we
remove
strike it or did council strike it? Is the next question.
Somebody striked it.
I would say that since this is a board that makes recommendations, I would recommend that this goes to, if there's an appeal process that goes to council, I would say this goes to council.
Is there a
for the
secondary
appeals
appeal?
process.
So the
Because
code says the
ultimately, all we
appeal
can
comes
do
to-
is make the recommendation
Does the
to
original-
council.
I will have.
Does the original appeal come to us? Is that what it says in there? Because I didn't even
In
know
other
that.
places that I've worked and do work, that's pretty common, that a use interpretation goes to the planning and zoning commission first, because that's kind of your specialty.
And then it
And
goes-
then ultimately, if an applicant wanted to appeal your determination,
Right.
that ultimately goes to city council.
I
I don't
didn't,
know that that's what your code requires.
I didn't think we had an appeal in there, but I could be wrong. So,
How, I do, while Sean's looking that up, I do want to state, I follow along with the intent, and I wasn't involved in the city whenever this change was made, so I'm going just on the documents that I've been given so far, but it seems like there was a purposeful intent in removing laundries and laundromats. I don't know the rationale behind that, but that seems like, I mean, it's very obviously stricken. And with that, in GCC two, which is a separate zoning district, but within the GCC two zoning district, things like dry cleaners are still allowed. That to me is kind of a signal that maybe GCC one, which is applied to a lot of the downtown, wasn't the ideal location in the eyes of the city, and that the preferred location were places like where GCC two is, such as out along 62, in the complexes like where Kroger and Tractor Supply are. Those are GCC two zoning. That's kind of, from a planning standpoint, what I was seeing with that is take those sorts of uses out of the core of the city and out to areas where they may be deemed more appropriate, but I don't know that because I don't have the full history. That's just from a kind of a planning aspect, how I see it, based on what's been adopted in the code.
Right.
So he's gotta apply for it.
he did apply so
Then he's gotta
there's,
go
if
ahead
there's an
and
appeals
review.
process, and I don't think that, we can't make a decision now until that appeal process comes in. If you want my feedback, I agree with it was our intent to remove it, but I would go with the plain language of the code as it is now in my application of it, and I agree with your interpretation that it would fall under there, but I'm personally, and I'll put that out there for myself, that,
Ideally, or I mean, honestly, however we find in whether it's in favor or not, this goes to council ultimately for appeal. council's the final decision-making process. So I would say that this should probably just go to council for appeal.
So you make the decision.
And maybe do we have I mean, I don't know if we have time to look if there's actually an appeal in there or not, but if we're this far down, or do we want to?
I'm trying to find the appeal.
We can do some research on this and come back to it.
Because that will be important, because if there's not an appeal in the code, his only recourse is through the courts, because it's a statutory usage standard.
Right.
Zoning makes the decision, and if the applicant wants to appeal, it goes to council.
Because of what's in the charter gives us the right to hear that. That's true. That's true. Even if it's not in the code, the charter gives us that right to hear that. Okay, so I guess we're good. There is a process
Makes a
to,
decision that personal effects does fall under laundry services, and you guys agree with that, then it doesn't have to go to council?
if we agree, then it would not go to council.
I would say let's do our due diligence on this.
We probably should go back to the attorney, but,
Let's do our due diligence on this,
I wish he was-
revisit it.
the one meeting he's
Staff will
not here
make the
for.
proper determination
Of
on
course.
which way we'll go with this.
And we didn't want to, we honestly, we didn't take the applicant and we didn't cash the check, because I don't want to see the applicant spend any money if they can get some kind of resolve from this. But I would say if we're going to continue down that road, the reason we take the checks is to kind of cover the cost of the work being done. So that's why I talked to Mr. Dan.
I totally understand. I did a lot of work looking into doing this. So, and then when I read C, it just, to me, it didn't, we didn't feel like it needed to include these other things, and that personal services and personal effects, laundry service was right under that category. I mean, definition of it. I mean,
and with
see if
only,
you guys felt the same way.
No, we appreciate you coming out tonight. We need to do our due diligence on the proper course of action on this with our staff and get back to these gentlemen on this.
two people aren't here tonight, so we.
Yeah,
even if
also
some-
two people are here, not here tonight, so
You don't
I
get
would
a
hate
full
to make a
flavor
decision
either.
on that without a full
Just
board.
Give me a call then.
Yeah, we'll have, if you've given us your information, we'll have staff get back in touch with you. Teresa, do you have their information?
So
No?
Sean
Okay.
Marvin's.
Okay, so
argument
we have
is
your
there's a
information and we will get back to you on the
appeals
proper
process
course of
through
action
the
for that.
Charter.
All right,
not
thank
through
you.
the Code.
All right,
It's an interesting point.
Next
Legal
on the
point
list,
to
I
that,
have
to
Chip
this
Cox.
process also.
yep.
Check it.
I was kind of on the same tip because, as my buddy back here, Dan, because in your code, it tells us to go to Webster for personal effects, since it's not in your guys' code of what interpretation is. So we don't have to interpret later, or we can figure it out now. Because Webster says personal effects, and if you want to look it up on the internet also and see what Webster says personal effects is, it says personal, I'm not even a very good reader. I mean, personal belongings, those worn or carried.
Your zoning book says that
If there's nothing in the zoning, so whatever you guys intended to do, you left this in here.
That's what we're supposed to apply code as is, right?
Yes, I don't know what you intended to do, and I never even got as a property owner, I never got any word that my usage was gonna change. So when I bought the building, I could do that. So, I mean, if you intended to not allow that, personal effects should have probably been taken out, since I just told you what, I mean, you can look it up also. There's no need to wait till tomorrow or anyone else. Personal effects, it is a permitted use because it is personal effects. It's taking care of something that's worn. I mean, that's just, there's no interpretation to be done.
your zoning book says if the word is not interpreted in the zoning book, it refers to Webster, right in your zoning book.
So, that's all I,
Well, we appreciate you guys coming in. We're gonna take a look at this, get our ducks in a row, and we'll get back to you.
thank you.
All right. Next on our list, I have Buddy Dow. Was this about your application or was this? Yeah. Okay. All right, well, so our first application, so we'll bring you back up when your application is. Appreciate you signing up though. All right, so is there any further public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda? All right, hearing no more, we'll go on to approval of the minutes from January 9th, 2024. Make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 7 is tabled application 10-10-1, conditional use permit for 795 West Coshocton Street. Is there any motion to take that off the table? Is there any new information on this? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed to item number 8.
How long has it been on the table, I guess?
But he put it on, right?
So it went on technically last meeting. So
Okay,
this is
so
the
we're
first
good.
meeting
Okay.
since then.
Yeah,
So we're
let's
good.
move on.
So we will move on to item number 8, application 11-13-1, the variance for 667, sorry, West Coshocton Street. We'll go ahead and bring up our applicant.
Boy, turn this back.
Yes, please.
It changed.
Mike Mockler with Signmaster, and for the variance. The variance is it's pretty straightforward. You have in there one sign per building, and we just want to add a sign to the pylon to the outside. And it's a, I don't know if they call it pylon sign.
Is this different than last?
Pylon sign was one out front. There's several other signs that people have within that complex. And we are gonna match the sign that was voted on in the last meeting.
Oh, the last meeting, you're talking about design review.
Yes.
Okay,
An hour ago.
yeah.
5:30 they approved, an hour and a half ago.
So just for clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
So the pylon is actually not even a part of the variance request tonight.
Yeah,
It is just the wall sign. So
Yeah.
if you want to save yourself a lot of headache, the pylon's not even in your consideration.
So what's the, and I'm misunderstanding, so what's the variance on the
Just-
wall sign, because that's not what we submitted?
The pylon is fine. He just had to go through the design review process for approval on the pylon sign, which he did tonight, and they got approval on the pylon. So the pylon is at this point pretty much a done deal. It's the wall sign that requires the variance for the reasons that were stated in the packet.
right.
So,
Okay. And I will go ahead and let Trevor or Sean, whoever wants to, give the background on this. Sorry, I should have done that before I gave you the chance to speak, but let's go ahead and get the background on this.
I could try to walk you through it real quickly.
Yes.
This is not the first time that we've had this, and there's a reason
It's not. and It's
there's a reason there's
gonna be
a
part of a longer conversation later.
agenda item at the end of this meeting
Yes.
tonight. So, as your current code states, right, wrong, or indifferent, states you can only have one wall sign per building. Probably not a great definition and not a great wording. We run into a pinch point here whenever we have a multi-tenant building, because it is one singular building, but it has multiple tenants in it. Our code simply states one wall sign per building. It's in the sign table code. So from the interpretation of that, we have to roll through you all to deviate from these rules. So that's where the variance can come into play. It's an allowable use, but it just has to be either one or two or whatever the case may be. So that's why they're here before you tonight. I don't want to overcomplicate it, really, that's it. There's been conversation about amending the code to allow for the multi-tenant situation to be alleviated, so we don't have to keep doing this exercise. But like I said, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what the code says, that's what staff has to put forth, and then they have to go through the process in order to be able to do what they want to do. So just for background, what I can tell you tonight that happened at the Design Review Board, I'm not going to go into the monument, but I will give you the specifications for the wall sign. Let me pull up a visual. That always helps me. Give me a moment. Okay. There we go. This one has the measurements. So this is a close rendering, but there was some modifications done by the design review board. So the modifications that you see, the total in this particular exhibit is 34 inches. The design review board had that shrunk down to 30 inches. The Boulder mattress lettering there, they put a provision that that is 16 inches. And then the warehouse would be 12 inches, and then a 2-inch gap in between. The warehouse would have the thinner lettering, and it was designated that the lettering would be slightly thinner than what has been represented up here. It's a funny excerpt. We're supposed to reference the truck trailer. For reference sake, staff will do its best to interpret that, but it was approved in that light. So the only other piece would be it's flush mounted. That's consistent. The length, 120.5. There's an anticipation by the applicant that that will shrink accordingly, but the design board did put a stipulation that that's a maximum, that it needs to come in under that, and the applicant did state that that would be shrunken down. There was no identifiable measurement given, so that's why it was the maximum.
Yeah, rescale it.
Got to rescale. There you go. Technical term. So that's where the design review board landed at with it. Like I said, it's more of an exercise in our code. And also from just page 1, the applicant is located. I did remove one of the variances that was identified in the previous week, and that was where it just said mattresses. And a wall sign, it does reference that it has to state the business's name. And so the applicant was made aware of that. They actually modified it to reflect Mattress Warehouse. So in the very first sentence, I still left 2 variances. They are only doing 1 variance, and that is for the wall sign. And any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer.
So it's just for that address, basically.
Just for that address.
I don't have any questions.
So what's the particular code provision that needs the variance? I guess it's still not
Basically,
clear.
my understanding is that you
Because it's
have.
part of the
It's just
building.
the number of-
multiple
it's the
tenants,
number of
so you'll have
signs?
One sign
The
for
building's one building.
every,
Got, okay,
the
okay.
whole place.
All right.
Code currently allows for one.
Correct.
So did you, I guess my question
Has its
is,
own address.
one of the issue, one of our goals on the zoning board is to try to get the city look nice, right? This thin acrylic signage, seems to be not the nicest sign in this little mall that I'm looking at.
Actually, the acrylic is a very desirable sign. It's a painted, doesn't fade, lighted signs that are basically the,
It's not internal lit, so I'll give you that. I like that part.
Similar
I
to
guess it's not-
Reynolds, their signs acrylic, same thing.
Did you guys talk about doing the overhead lights in the design review board?
it's not required.
But
Plus
what,
it-
So our
If you
part's
said-
not on the lighting though, our part's just on whether or not they get the sign on the building. So
yeah, but,
basically,
you guys just didn't want to do the lights or
The problem
did
with the
you?
lights is that if you look at all the lights on the complex, all they do is cover up the signage.
They don't have,
It looks
their
terrible.
gooseneck is not put on properly to really avoid it.
All right, touche.
Properly.
I'm with you.
If you want
So
to
the-
look nice,
the-
don't put lights on it.
And I mentioned if you wanted to, so Evans Farm and Lewis Center, if
Yeah.
you're familiar with that, every single sign there's acrylic, every single sign has a gooseneck that's over it to shine down. That would be a good example to see that why that is a desirable sign. So that's probably one of the best examples I could show because every single sign on the building is acrylic.
the trouble in this situation is, like Sean said, every time that we have, due to unclear zoning and kind of vague zoning code that we have, every time we have one of these come in, we have to take a look at this. So, judging from other conversations we've had, every time one of these buildings splits into a new business or whatever, a new unit, we have to make a decision on signage. I think that decision's coming later, and I'd hate for these guys to get caught up in between zoning, that may or may not change anyway. As I always say, if you're going to accept multiple variances, you should probably just change the zoning anyway.
Yeah, my recommendation is, there's something before you later on the agenda to address the
Right.
specific issue. The previous course of action has been to grant these variances when they've
Right.
been requested. I see no issue in granting this variance.
So that's my thought. That's my thought as well. If you're going to change the zoning later, or if you're going to vote in favor of this, you need to change the zoning later. If you're not going to vote in favor of this, then we better back up the zoning every single time. Anything else from our commissioners, our staff? Anything else from our applicant? Before we take a vote, I will bring up for public comment. And if you could please turn the podium around, I will let Mr. Block have his public comment.
This guy's getting caught in the middle. I don't know him from Adam, but you had a Kroger store in there. When Kroger moved out, they busted the building down, the owner did. Did that owner ever come to you and ask for lot splits or anything like that for that property?
That was
That's something
before
that
all
should
of
be
us.
considered, huh?
That was before all of us.
The staff could consider that. If a building's gonna be broke down, it should come before the board, so you know what it's gonna be, and you know how many signs are gonna have to be up, instead of going through this for these people.
No, I agree, and that's the point we're gonna make later on here in the meeting.
So we don't have to keep.
And that
we shouldn't
seems
have
to
go
be the
through this
historic problem
process.
we've had ever since it was done that way,
I
so.
just want.
It's a code
the same
problem.
thing that is on the rest, everybody else in the unit has a sign on the building and a sign on the pylon. Like I told
Yep,
Terry,
after I
if
get
it's not
public
approved
comment.
Over the course of the next few years, as tenants move out, your pylon out front is gonna be bare, and that's gonna look really bad.
Right.
And
Was
so
there any
I-
other public comment on this before I bring our applicant back up for any closing remarks and we take a vote? All right, hearing none, I'll bring our applicant back up if you have anything to say. If not, okay.
I thought you were just
All right.
giving me exercise.
At this time, I'll go ahead and, is there a motion to approve?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve, what is it, 11-1-3-1?
And can I ask that you make reference to the size requirements that is done by the
Design review
Design
board.
Review Board?
Yes.
And I've laid those forth in the minutes, and they should just be reflected in the minutes.
Yeah, so as long as it meets the
Okay.
size requirements by the
Design Review Board.
design review.
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Steve Dyer,
Yes.
Jesse Cobble.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
And I think we owe, you guys did get caught up in a bad code that it's been on our radar to fix this, and so we apologize that.
Yeah, I mean, I
it's-
understand.
We're a small town, so
It's a small
it's,
town,
it's, a-
it's-
things move
You and I,
slow.
Jesse, have talked. I see Jesse a couple times a week, but we've talked that.
Buys a lot of properties.
This was applied for in October.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys coming in. I understand if you don't want to hang around for the rest of the meeting, make it a little dry.
You've been patient enough.
See ya.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
And with that, we will go ahead and move on to application 12-10-1, variance at 105 Jersey Street. And I will open up with our staff to give us the background on this. We'll also bring our applicant forward.
12-19.
This is 12-10-1, item number 9.
Oh, absolutely. Once again, outside mine, so anytime I have questions, I defer to Trevor, so Trevor will take a lot of the lead on this one.
Sure. So the staff report starts on page 24 of your packet. There's 4 variances being requested as part of this application. The sections are located there at the top of the first page of the staff report, but several things related to minimum lot size, width, setbacks, and then another section that's not in the residential code, but is applicable to setbacks for corner lots, which is chapter 171. Staff report goes through and illustrates on page 24 there the location of the property, which is at the corner of Jersey and William Street. And the variances, again, the variances are being requested are fairly minimal. Actually, Sean, can I see that?
Yeah, you sure can.
Right. All right.
Appreciate you waiting through our technical difficulties.
All visual.
Well, maybe.
No difficulties, it's working, see?
All right, there we go.
Okay. So on the screen there, you can see the variances requested at the top, the property information in the middle of the screen. These are two existing residential lots. They have UR2 zoning. They're not within the overlay district, but they are within one of the urban, or the design districts, which is the urban neighborhood district that it's part of. And so that will require a separate review. So the applicant is proposing to construct a single-family home on the two existing lots there at the corner of Jersey and William Street. The aerial that's at the bottom of the screen is an illustration of the property in 2016. This aerial was retrieved from the Licking County Auditor's website. In the light pinkish area that you see right in the middle of that graphic is the footprint of the previous home that was on the property. Since this aerial was taken, the lot has been cleared, that home is no longer there, but I wanted to provide that just for some context for everyone. And so I wanted to take a look, as we always do when we are reviewing these sorts of requests, at the surrounding context. And as many of you are probably aware, the lots within this Bellevue addition are all a little bit more narrow. The homes are pretty close together. They're a little closer to the street than what the zoning allows for, and some of the homes across the street that I believe will develop or built probably at a later date. But within that development, you see that most of the homes are built on two lots straddling that what used to be a center lot line. And even two lots together are total about 50 feet in width generally throughout this subdivision. And so that in itself does not meet the zoning code. So basically none of those lots that are currently there, very few of them meet the current 55-foot minimum lot requirement. Most of those lots are 50 feet as they exist today. So this analysis here illustrates the amount of area that could technically be built if you applied all the setbacks that are currently written in the code. So that the dark pink area there, right in the middle, is the area that could be built on, which, as you can tell, is very limited amount.
Have a driveway.
Yeah. And so
Looks
again,
nice.
I've included all this to illustrate what the regulations are on the property require.
Basically. Got wheels.
Okay, so in this request, I went through one at a time, each section of the variance. I won't step through every section of these. I'll go to my recommendation and a quick analysis. You all can stop me, feel free if you have questions as we're going through this. So the first variance that's being requested is for minimum lot size. The minimum lot size in UR2 is 7,500 square feet. Based on, I believe, the odd geometry at the corner created by the right-of-way, this lot is about 7,400 square feet total. That kind of is what it is. The right-of-way was there to facilitate the roadway, and I believe some sidewalk additions that were added at some point. It looks like a typical take for one of those small cutouts for a sidewalk. So in this regard, for this variance for minimum lot size, I don't see any issue with approving this variance. It's very similar to the lot sizes that are all within the neighborhood around there. And there was a single family home here previously. Additionally, I don't think, if this variance is not granted, I don't foresee any other use being for these properties. It's the minimum lot size. Unless you change the code or grant this variance, I don't really see any other use that could realistically be put on these lots in the foreseeable future. Before I move on, any questions there?
No, sir.
Okay. Second variance is minimum lot width. Again, I briefly touched on that. Most of the lots in here are two combined 25-foot lots for a total of 50 feet. UR2 zoning requires a minimum of 55 feet. Here again, similar scenario. If a variance is not granted or the code is not changed, it's unlikely that really anything will be put on these lots for the foreseeable future. So in taking that into account, I don't see any issue again with, sorry, I'm waiting for my screen to catch up.
50 feet versus 55.
I don't see any issue there with allowing the variance to be granted. I'm waiting on the screen to catch up. I can't see it on my screen. That was lovely.
Uh-oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay. Okay, the third variance is for the minimum front setback. The minimum front setback is, let's see. The minimum front setback in the R2 zoning district is 30 feet. The applicant is requesting 17 feet. I did recommend denial of this variance, and I wanted to explain why. Generally, it's been my take on listening into several of the meetings that you all have had and engaging as part of the comp plan, the public, and kind of how Sean's been doing things even in the past. Generally, we always try to minimize variances to the greatest extent possible to accommodate development. And the reason for that is you don't ever want to get in a position where you're just rubber stamping variances for everything that comes through. The lots that are in question are about 150 feet in depth, and I believe that with the footprint that's been proposed, even if the front setback is met at 30 feet, they still have full use of the property, they can build a home, anything like that. So in this case, and at this point I'm just providing a little color commentary to you all, is you all are kind of in the position, you can choose if you want to try to stick as strictly as possible to the code, you can deny this variance. However, if you feel that it's more important to stick with the look and feel of the neighborhood, the existing built environment that's been established, you can certainly approve this variance because the setback that's being proposed at 17 feet is very similar to the neighbors that are in the area. And that's why I recommend denial, because I was taking the stance of we're sticking to the code as much as possible to facilitate development. However, you all can certainly feel differently about that if you so choose. And the last variance, oh, it's gonna.
Side or setback.
The last the last variance is for setback requirements for corner buildings. This really should apply to any zoning district, so I think this could come up in the future. This is the first time I've been made aware of it. But Chapter 1171.05 requires that on corner lots that the same front yard setback be met on that corner yard, which in this case, to go back to that earlier illustration that showed the very narrow piece that could be built under the current setbacks, if the setbacks are applied for the side corner, that's the same 30 feet for the front yard. So 30 feet from the front, 30 feet from the side. That really limits the amount of area that you could build on. So in this case, I don't see much of an issue again with issuing a variance for this. There's other homes across the street that are closer in this area that are closer to the street. The speed limit on Jersey Street is fairly low. The site triangle should not be impacted by the proposed setbacks. So I don't have any issue. I don't see any reason that granting this variance would afford them any rights that neighboring property owners don't already enjoy. So that's basically very quickly. My recommendations, that there's a summary of them on the screen there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or hear from now.
All right, that concludes your portion. We'll go ahead and hear from our applicant.
I think you did a pretty good job. I mean,
I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I want to give you credit. That's probably the most comprehensive we've seen in a while.
Obviously, I agree with 3 of the 4 of his opinions. But no, like you were saying, though, it does match how the whole neighborhood looks. If I cheat that all the way back 30 feet, well, that's going to be basically unusable space, but then it's going to make that whole road look a little awkward, like, it won't match every other house along Jersey, basically. So, and it gives me more backyard to have for, kids and things like that. So, yeah, obviously everything else was pretty cut and dry, I think. But the front setback would be crucial.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you wanted to explain or throw out at the beginning before we start asking questions?
No, fire away.
Okay. All right. He said it. I'll open up for questions from our commissioners.
So I agree with the recommendations up here, to be honest. What is average setback of houses within that neighborhood?
I didn't go through and average them out, but I think they were generally anywhere between about four, and again, this is me measuring,
Sure.
not survey accurate or anything like that. This is using online tools that I can use to measure it. Anywhere between probably 14 and 21 or 22 feet. Generally, it kind of,
I will say I had Ron Dane write this up and kind of design it based on the setbacks of the houses. I told him I wanted to match up with every other house along the road, so I'm guessing that 17 feet is right in line with every other house right there, so that would be the average based on Ron Dane's
And knowing that
drawings.
Ron Dane wrote it up, former zoning member,
Yeah, I
helped us
asked him
write
all-
helped us write a lot of these
Yeah, and I-
codes. He usually knows what he's doing
I
in
don't know
there.
mathematically what the average is, but I would
Yeah.
agree that generally that looks like about the average of most.
See, I tried him to get him to write up so I didn't have to come up here, so he gave as close as he could without having to do all this, so that's why they're almost.
We could recommend something in the middle.
Could we pull up the county auditor page?
Right,
Do you have that available?
I can't give you that, but yes, I can.
And then,
Have it if
like
you
you
want.
said, there is the
Alright.
backyard. I understand it.
So I went through and I did kind of sit there and measure each one. The trouble with the county auditor page is plus or minus 10 feet of accuracy, and that's within the standard margin of deviation here, unfortunately. So when you're looking at that, I mean, I'll agree with Trevor. They were all kind of in between, in between that span there. I did measure a property right around the corner that was approved a couple years ago. It was one of yours, and that was about 30 feet. I don't know. According to the county auditor page, is about 30 feet. I don't know if you know offhand what that one was.
It was just the length of my driveway, which was 20 feet.
Okay, because that was
I built
the
a house that was 50 by 75 block right on the corner of
Yeah.
the street. And so, yeah, that's all I had.
and that was the last one that was approved in that neighborhood. So I wanted it to be fair and wanted to be similar to that. And I mean, what I had was about 30 feet. The previous house on there that was removed, that had a setback of roughly 26 feet. It had a side setback to the house next door, which that house is on the property line if you look at it. So whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. That had 21 feet difference, 11 feet to the street side, and 88 to the back. So as long as, when I look at these types of neighborhoods where we're doing infill or where we're replacing something that was there, I want to get as close as I can to the house that was there or the houses that are in the area. Trouble is, when he pulls it up here, you'll see on that corner, the house on the opposite side of William Street probably does have that 30-foot setback. But then there's a house on the other corner that's 5 feet, and then there's another one that's 26,
Oh, this thing is,
roughly.
Okay, well,
It's working
sorry,
good.
I can't see my mouse over here, so this is really gonna be a pain, but,
You're in Jersey Township now, so you got to go
yeah, I know.
northwest of there. Westland Church, I know exactly where that is.
okay.
Good work.
All right.
I can tell he's done this before.
And then if you can go to the graphics up there from 2016.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, 2008 is a little more clear. I went back through all these. I think that shows you the most clear.
You're talking about the previous house that was there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I based a lot of
What's
my
the measurement
decision
on that?
off of what the previous house was because that was the original intent of the neighborhood. And I want to say from there to the street, you're probably going to have
What is that?
about
one measure
26
at?
feet.
That was at 26 right there.
Yeah, I was gonna just change that number from 17 to 20.
I mean, from that corner, it's
With
like
20,
super close.
23 feet. I think
It's
you'd be
like
all
7 or 8
right.
feet from that
22.
alcove out the street.
Yeah, and then it's funny because when you look at it on later maps, I measured like 5 different versions of that house,
It's
and
because
they were
aerials
different.
don't always geolocate.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's the trouble with that. It's plus or minus 10 feet, and we're inside of that.
That's right, Dan. I don't have any more questions.
So that's what I was gonna say. I'm debatable on that. If you wanted to change the number of that setback, I could be persuaded either way.
So I'll go ahead and I had a couple things that is there a sidewalk requirement on William Street since it's a corner lot?
It's a good question. I didn't review it for that.
Should be.
I'd have to go take a look.
There is a sidewalk across the street, and my sidewalk would lead right to an alley. So that sidewalk's already, that sidewalk on the cross the street's already there. So
There is a provision.
If we could go to the,
Have to be on all.
to the latest,
Yeah, I think
there's a
it's
sidewalk right to
every
the
new
crosswalk,
build,
but
right?
it ends right there. And across the street, it goes all the way down.
And then
Yeah.
this is sort of
It wasn't on the application though.
just,
Exactly.
have you thought about with the potential expansion of Jersey in the future, if you might be able to save that house from eminent domain if it was back a little bit further? No one can predict the future, but that might be a reason to bump it back a little bit. But again, I would tend to leave that decision up to you as the property owner. But just wanted to throw that out there as a food for thought. I think that.
can we scroll back towards the school? Be back south of there? Is there any sidewalk between there and the school?
No.
I'm
You mean on
surprised.
the other side?
It's
No,
on the other
your
side, but
side.
not
Oh,
on
my,
the street.
yeah.
Doesn't mean that-
Surprised there's not.
Being that close to the school.
We got a lot of walkers.
Surprised there's
Yeah.
not.
We got a "Don't block my driveway" sign. That's what we got over there.
Dog, a lot of
Well, the
big
school
dogs.
line waits there, so.
I'm not that far yet. I'm not that far advanced. We're in kindergarten.
So my thought on the front setback is shouldn't be the closest one to the street, but I don't think that 30 is, I'm good being flexible off of 30, so what if we can come to maybe something in the middle would be, but see what Ryan thinks too.
Is there a curb on either side of that street?
Nope.
So how would you?
Well, in the front there might be actually. In the front, I think there is.
Well, in the front there is, yeah. On William Street.
Yeah, William Street, there's definitely not.
Yeah, so Jersey there is, but it probably stops. So it looks like maybe the opposite side of this, or is that just the sidewalk?
That's just the, oh, there is a curb.
Yeah.
But not on his side of the street.
No.
Correct.
Is it gonna throw your plans off that too much if we ask you to bump it back a few feet? From like
No, I
17 to like 20 or something like that, or 22?
My whole thought was just making it look like it fit in.
Yeah,
You know, put it 20 feet back, it's not gonna be the end of it.
it won't be visually too much different, and
So.
When I looked at it, I went for uniformity. The trouble is there's no uniformity on that street.
he did get you with the
You
two
have-
houses next to you. I
You
think,
have,
but
you
that
have
street
an
does vary a
average.
little bit.
The house on, I mean, all three of those corners, I mean, at least from Jersey right there to the house on the other side, I think was like 26. That other one's clearly right up on the curb. The other one is probably about 26. So that's what I said. I don't know that we need to go to the full 30, but I would say somewhere probably around 20.
Call it 20 and call it even.
That's what I'm thinking as we bring it to.
All right, let's do, I would still, Sean, are you looking into the sidewalk? Because that's the only outstanding issue that I
I'm
had.
checking.
Keep moving on.
I'm
if
trying
not.
to find it now. I do recall a reference to where any,
Regardless, the sidewalk should go in the right of way, so it shouldn't impact his setbacks because the setbacks are
They'll
measured
be on the
generally from
same
the property
property.
line, which in this case is also the right of way line.
but it may be required by the applicant to install a sidewalk.
Well, that's-
You're gonna have to
what I
come
was gonna
back.
say.
I want to prevent him from having to come back again.
It's
is my
probably
point.
not for us, but it's probably in the building code somewhere, and the requirements somewhere. Curb, sidewalks, and trees are usually the three that are in there
Oh, yeah, I mean,
somewhere.
I'd say if that's required for any new residential development, that would be required here as well.
All right, public, well, you're the leader. Let's go public comment, my friend.
All right, anything else from the commission?
No,
Before I
sir.
go to public comment. Okay, since we don't have two podiums yet, I'll have you take a seat and I'll bring up any public comment. All right, I'll ask you to turn the podium around
You can hear me. If
for Mr. Marvin Block.
you require sidewalk down there, this block goes clear to the right of way. And if you get a 5-foot sidewalk in the right of way, it's gonna decrease the size of that road 5 foot.
1171.
And as far as the setback, have you ever noticed the house up on Coshocton Street? The gray two-story house that sets way back is out of line with all those houses?
Grade 2-story on Coshocton.
Across from where Sean's got his businesses. It's on
Oh,
Coshocton Street.
yeah.
Newer house, it sets back, they may done stick to the 35 foot. Look how that looks completely out of place back.
You
All right.
take what you want.
Yeah, sure.
Any-
Looking at the code, chapter 1171.25, sidewalks at a minimum will be required. So there's one on Jersey already. So
Regardless of what we say, that's already in the code, you're saying?
yeah, if they don't
Okay.
want to do it, they'd have to request a variance for that
Okay.
as well.
I figured it
And he
had to
couldn't
be
do
in
an
there
amended-
somewhere.
He couldn't do an amended variance request right now to include that? Or would he have to give another, more public notice for that? I'm trying to save him his time if we can include everything that he needs a variance for tonight and just wrap it up.
I would, I'm not sure your legal advertising requirements, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
would recommend doing that.
Yeah, you need to,
And we would, street trees, I'm not sure, I'm trying to check into that right now as well. Street trees.
Zoning's fun.
Let's make a motion.
zoning is fun. We just,
Yeah, at this point, I mean, we have a variant, we have a complete application in front of us, you all have heard it, I recommend taking action.
You didn't advertise the variance for
Do
a
you have-
sidewalk,
would you
so
have
you
to-
would not want to give a variance without the proper notification, because
Right.
if it did get questioned by any public citizen, you would lose. I would say you would lose. You can defer to Thad for his recommendation, but if you don't follow the public notice provisions that are set forth in the ordinances and in the charter, then you're gonna walk into trouble.
So are you following the conversation here?
You guys just cost me a lot more money. No, I'm just kidding.
That, we didn't get it, we didn't kill all the birds.
Blame everything on council, because they're the ones that wrote the rules. We just
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. He said it, not me.
Might be seeing you again for the sidewalk, but I think I'll make a motion
heavy
to.
shoulders.
So is that a concern what Marvin said though, as far as 5 foot into that road? Is that what, where the
It-
sidewalks gonna go?
It has to go in the right of way, so,
And that road's already a parking lot from 230 to 330. That's not wide enough as it is probably.
yeah, so, and that's the strong reason to give a variance for the sidewalk, so, that issue, I think, is, since we
well,
didn't get
he
you.
has, he can apply for it later.
Yeah, it will have, I guess that's where
Yeah.
I just want to make sure he knows that where we're at, like, we're good to go, but,
Yeah.
we can't do it.
So let's go ahead and.
I'll make a
further
motion
public
to.
comment. Wait, wait, wait,
Oh,
wait,
we
wait,
got- we
wait,
got more
wait,
public?
wait. Is there any further public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Is there anything else from our staff or our commission?
Not unless you have any questions.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance request with condition that the front setback be 20 feet.
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call, please.
Jesse Koppel,
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Steve Dyer.
Yes.
All right. We appreciate you coming in.
I'm gonna go.
We have two more items on here.
You're one of our favorite customers.
And if, yeah, he is a recurring customer. If you don't want to hang around for the rest, we don't blame you.
I'll hang around.
We're the best show on Tuesday nights, unless council's on.
All right, moving on.
All right, so moving on to item number 10. The signage amendment for wall signs, discussion and recommendation to council. Proceed with our draft legislation, please.
We are gonna keep this real brief and try not to get into the weeds, and I even.
Oh, we're talking signs. It's gonna go in the
Well,
weeds.
That's why I'm trying to keep you
There's no way it
inside the
doesn't.
safe boundaries of the confines where we're at. So we recognize that this is not an all-encompassing fix to the signs. However,
No.
so that we don't get into the weeds and try to cover too many of the fixes that may be necessary, really tonight, what we were tasked, and I gave Trevor the assignment to do, was specifically look at the wall sign situation that we keep running into for a variance. I understand that there's a variety of other things, but really just want to focus on the wall sign. This is a placeholder. It doesn't have to be where we end up. but this is a stop on that journey. And so, not to overcomplicate it, that is why it's pretty brief in its entirety. So if you're in agreement with this or have questions, we are here to answer those. Ultimately, we would like to get this in front of council. We've had multiple variance requests for this particular piece, and it's helpful if we don't have to burden the staff or you all with a variance request that can be eliminated just by changing some wording, and that's where I'll leave it.
As I said earlier, we haven't upheld this as I said earlier, we haven't upheld this one yet, so we might as well change it in our code. My big question with this is, okay, and Marvin said it earlier too. We have a building come in, and Kroger's a great example of that up there. Well, it's not Kroger anymore, it's Tractor Supply. Came in as Kroger and probably way less buildings than are there now. I mean, I wasn't here for that. I mean, I don't know how many businesses were originally supposed to go in there. Probably half of what's there now. And we've seen this on Main Street and in other places. If they continue to subdivide a building, how many signs are they entitled to, and how many times can they subdivide? And, you know, where does the line draw so that we don't fade into obscurity?
I can answer that real quick.
Okay.
So, great question, had the same question. It's based on linear feet.
Okay.
So you're only allowed so much wall sign per linear feet. So if you decide, for instance, Kroger's, that's a whole building, they want to take up the entire linear feet for that one particular one and not allow anybody else to have it because they're the first ones in, I guess that's the ability. But I'm pretty sure the strip center owner, whatever the case may be, is going to say, that's going to probably run conflict with me getting other tenants into the building. So they're gonna take that ratio into effect, and they're gonna say, okay, this is gonna be a placeholder for Kroger's. This is how much they're gonna get, and they're gonna section it off accordingly as to what they want to see. So same thing with the downtown. We had the applicant come in. So what it would do is it would say, this is your linear feet. If you want to have one sign that has all of them on it, or if you want to have 4 smaller signs, but your total square footage of signage can't be over the linear feet.
And it's got it.
And the only correction I had is there was one mathematical error in determining that linear feet. It should be reversed. We actually have can't find it yet, but I'll go from memory. 1.5 divided by the linear feet should be linear feet divided by 1.5. If you do the math the other way, nobody gets a sign. So if you do it the correct way, so when we take this to council, if that is the desire, we'll change that one modification, and so it'll have linear feet divided by 1.5 rather than 1.5 divided by the linear feet. But that would be the only thing, but hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to get 100 little tiny signs. And over there, it's not even such, like, where Tractor Supply is, it's not even that big of a problem. Like, if they kept subdividing and making tiny signs, it is what it is. But I'm more worried about Main Street and in other parts of town because, you know, just because you give a guy a desk does not mean he gets a sign out front. And so that's what I want to make sure that we encapsulate in there, you know, what determines your subdivision and at what point do you get a sign. Now, if the square footage works in that.
I mean, it says, ain't my barbecue.
So, we'll give you public comment here at the end of it. Yep. I wanna make sure of that, you know.
Sure.
Now I know why Chip has questions. 'Cause,
So in
you
this
know,
regard,
I mean, if he splits into 3 businesses right there, like, I want to make sure that what I don't want to see in the downtown area is we turn into like New York City where you just have a sign for everybody.
no, I understand. And
I don't want Times Square in the middle of Johnstown.
no, so really the method that I applied to this was the same kind of ratio that, to Sean's point that he was just describing. That still applied, but rather than using the whole building as your measure, your yardstick, you're using just that unit. So let's say that he makes 3 little units. He's not gonna have 3 big wall signs. He might have 3, but they're gonna get really small as that linear footage of frontage goes down. And so you might have 3, but they're gonna be
Small.
they're gonna be much smaller. So you may have more of them, but it's not gonna be 3 billboard sized signs. Like, it's not gonna be all of a sudden the whole front of the building is all signage. because from the exterior in that scenario anyways, you really wouldn't even know the difference because the front of the building is gonna look the same, just like in these strip centers. There might be a door, an extra door or something, but the overall appearance is gonna be the same.
So that's where I wonder if we can do better with this, because over in Tractor Supply, that's fine. And from the road, like, they want big signs because your business, nobody will know your business is there. But on Main Street, it's different. If you have 100 little small signs, I mean, it just, you know, it decreases from the look of Main Street. So if that's something we need to encapsulate in a design overview or something, if we need to put that somewhere else in the code somewhere to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm fine with it. But I just don't think for that certain area of town, I think what you're gonna end up with is a lot of small signs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to navigate that without, and this is the problem with doing these.
Legalities
It's
are,
not-
are real. I don't wanna get sued either, but,
No, no, no,
you
no,
know,
not. But
I don't wanna clutter the, you know, a historic area.
I think the challenge with trying to do these small surgical changes is that every time you pull at the ball of yarn, it just disintegrates. So I think that is a very valid concern. However, I don't know that building owners within downtown are all of a sudden going to rush to split their buildings up into a bunch of different units just to get more signage because it doesn't behoove them in any way to do that.
They're not gonna do it for signage. They're gonna do it because the rents are high and they're gonna make the money.
Well, then they're going to do that.
I mean, like,
It's up to the landlord, right, to decide.
It
what-
is, it
And
is.
keep in mind,
And pay for it.
every one of those signs will still have to apply for a permit and go through the DRB as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I wanna have a very clear and concise guideline so that we don't have to have.
I understand that.
A public argument.
You want to go with this sign change. I'll just
Okay.
Right, no,
You're
this
not
is
gonna
a
get there from-
placeholder.
Yeah.
Well, and if this
That's
is,
absolutely something that
if this is a
you can go
conversation
to
we need to have in design review, or if we need to have this in a historic district overlay, however we need to do it, I just wanna, I wanna note this page and we bring it up later on, so that we do it the right way.
Have an example, Sheldon?
I do have an example. I think what Ryan's referencing is a specific situation that did arise and came before the zoning commission, and so you have.
I don't wanna give it a name.
So, and what we have here is, I love Trevor's, you know, it's gotta be a unit, but we run into a situation where what defines the unit, typically in a multi-tenant, it's a doorway. With this, we have one singular doorway being used for multi-tenant situation, so you can't see it here, because this is an outdated photo, but over here, there is another realtor sign, which is Caldwell Banker, so then we start to Ryan's point, have sign here, and really, how do you define the unit? Because right now, it looks like the unit is just singularly, because it has one walkway, one doorway, one entry, and then you also have the masons, which is up on top, so I don't, it's a very complex conversation. I think the downtown is definitely different than a multi-tenant.
If I can, I was going to.
Absolutely.
I was going to run through a quick presentation because the
Oh,
language that I
we
wrote
love
addresses some of that
presentations.
as well.
Okay.
So
We're gonna learn.
I'm going to steal your
Yeah.
board back.
We should sit next to each other.
This poor thing.
There's another building I wanna reference too, where I like how they did it a little bit better, where there's one major sign, but then on the door is all of the other businesses. I'd much rather go that way.
And that could probably still be accomplished with the current code that you have today.
Okay.
This thing loves to mess with me.
Cause I want everybody to have a sign. I mean, if you're paying rent, you should have a sign, but at the same time, I don't wanna clutter a historic area.
So very quickly, this is what the current regulations read for wall signs, in chapter 1177.14. So first off, this is confusing from an English language standpoint, and two, it doesn't really accomplish what I think you're going for. But it says wall signs must generally be placed on higher than the floor, window sills of the second floor. But that means you're putting your sign over your second floor windows if they're above the sill of the second floor. So, but really what you're getting at, I think, is that you would like signs above your front door, but not necessarily up higher on the buildings. Sounds like that's what we're getting at. So the language that I recommended to be changed would be signage needs to be between the height of the primary entrance and below the second floor window sills. So that gives you kind of that right over your front door
Oh, okay.
signage visibility. It does not allow exactly what Sean just pulled up. It does not allow for stuff to go up above.
Well, that's, yeah.
It kind of keeps it in that banner that you're accustomed to seeing signage within urban environments like this. Then what this does for more suburban context, like your shopping centers that we've been talking about, to Sean's earlier point, right now there's 3 units, 1 sign per building. That's 1 building, they get 1 sign. In this case, it's unit 2, no one else gets a sign.
We have to stick to that.
What this is allowing for would be that based on the width of each individual unit, you can have a sign that's proportional to that width. So if someone has 3 or 4 units, they can have a bigger sign potentially.
Cut it
Or
down.
Kroger, they have a bigger frontage, they have a bigger sign. But you're still limited to the maximum sign size that's in the code. So it's not taking off that maximum allowable sign area per sign. You still have that limitation, that's not changing. But this allows for multiple unit buildings to have a sign over every unit, which I think is generally all of the variances that have come before this board on that regard have been specifically for this reason, is because, hey, I've got my own unit, but I can't have a sign because we're all part of one big building. And that's what I think it solves that, and it also, I think, clarifies a little bit within more urban context like downtown that specifically where those signs are supposed to go.
Okay.
You still have the issue, Ryan, of your point of you still have the possibility to have additional signs, but the area that they're allowed to be placed in is more limited.
Okay.
And so that's a very, again, Sean's point is very brief, but I'm happy to take questions if you
I
have.
mean, it could, but
So we have another, if you want to bring up the auditor page again, we have another building that's down there.
You might
You
want.
go on the west side.
Yeah, so you know it better,
Oh.
you know the city better than
Sean
me.
knows which one I'm talking about.
Maybe.
We've talked about it before.
you look at it every time.
Every time, I don't know. Google Earth is, I think, what we'll need.
Whichever one, that's fine.
Okay.
Auditor has Street View now.
Ooh.
I love it. I hang out on County Auditor all day.
All right, so where you want me to drive?
Right, yeah, keep going down the street there.
Why does it not let me go down there? All right, we'll fix that.
So I still don't understand. I'm not following why we can't do a frontage ratio.
That's what this is.
It
It's
has it.
I thought it was a square footage ratio.
A linear frontage.
Okay.
Yep.
The code also does have that.
Okay.
You are correct, Jesse.
All right.
They're about leasable square footage.
All right.
But it is.
Should
that's-
be,
in
the
looking
total
at the
sign.
co- in
should
looking
be
at the
there
code,
next
it's
to
a little
Ghost
bit-
Rider on the
Okay.
right.
Yeah, we always look at this one.
Oh, did I go too
Right there, right there on the right.
Turn right.
far? Turn right.
So you have Edward Jones listed
Yep.
out there, and they have other businesses on the front of those.
Yep.
And then there's more businesses than that back through there.
Sure.
And they're all listed on the door, I think.
Okay. But keep in mind,
Yeah, right there on the left
keep
side
in
of
mind,
the
there's
door.
like 3 different types of sign per your code on there. That's an awning sign.
Mhm.
That's a window sign.
There's no wall signs.
Okay, so there's no wall sign, but just in that, there's 2 different wall signs, even though, so just keep that in mind, that we're
Okay.
dealing with a lot of different types here,
Let's
and
stick
none
with-
of those are wall signs.
Let's stay with walls. Let's go flip to the other side of the street because I have one more comment.
All right. Dizzy yet?
Next to the wall sign there.
I feel like we're not getting the quality of signs still with, and maybe come back to.
Where do you want me to go?
Well, the printing shop is a good example. There's a lot of good examples here of where I'm trying to go with this. That we're getting a lot of these like thin signs, thin acrylic letters, or I don't even know what material is that's made out of. But I feel like it would be more appropriate to have more character in our signs. So I would like to propose a 1-inch minimum depth to the sign. I think we'll get more quality signage that way. These thin, and we tried to do this by talking through potential material requirements for the design review code, but we couldn't get there because we didn't know the materials well enough, to be honest with you. But I think that just the minimum depth is an easy way to get there.
I don't disagree with you, Jesse. I did just
Yeah.
want to throw out one thing. So, for example, using the printing sign, if you require them to have a 1-inch minimum depth, they may start going just to a cabinet with that same panel on it to get that 1-inch depth, and it may still be the same end result. That may not always be the case, but that is a possibility. That they'll
Just
they
the
set up
border,
flush
there's just be a
mount-
border around it that's 1 inch and then with the same thing in the back.
That, or they'll just buy a really shallow cabinet like you would for an internally illuminated sign, so you get that 4 inches, but you still use that exact same face. You just mount it in an aluminum frame.
Is there an easy recommendation to solve this? Because if you look down that side of the street, there's a lot of these Like, I don't know, like the
No,
real
I know
thin
exactly
plastic
what you're talking
signs
about.
and.
It's just like a printed on an acrylic sheet or whatever.
I feel like there's room for improvement.
My short
Actually,
answer is, no, I don't have a
organically.
recommendation because those things are so responsive to what the community wants that just because what I think is a good sign, you all may hate. So I don't have a quick response for that.
Maybe if you could come up with, I guess,
I would say you would want to channel that towards your architect. No offense, Trevor. Planners and architects are very different in their conceptual basis, but they do have similarities. But yeah, I would reference, if you're going to do an architectural standard, there's been talk about Johnstown having a uniform sign. I don't know that that's maybe the model you want in the downtown, because the downtown has a difference in characteristics from the buildings, but from a standardized sign, you see that in some of your other cities, maybe not all through town, but at least in certain areas that have a commonality or common theme. But I think you would want that to be drafted through that architectural basis.
What works in that downtown area is not gonna work in the Kroger area.
well,
Like
I mean,
that's
honestly, like if the Mattress Warehouse, if that acrylic was thicker, I think it would look better. Back to my point with him.
I don't
And
disagree.
we don't have any tools with it. The design review board doesn't, do you guys have any tools that allow you to work with as far as maybe just aesthetically, but I mean, I think we don't have any tools to my knowledge that even would let you discuss that as a criteria right now.
So, I mean, you got the old horseshoe that's got these lettering that aren't probably 1 inch. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know that looks bad. I think it's a
thought
very
like-
complex situation that I'm not even gonna dive into to have the answer, because I'm just giving you devil's advocate of 1 inch sign. This is a visual that doesn't look all that bad. I love the arm signs, but again, it's a capricious decision.
All right, I'm gonna change the language a little bit for my proposal. It'd be a 1/2 inch minimum depth width for the lettering. You guys like that? I think it works in all the areas that.
It's gonna
there's wall
it's gonna
signs.
get rid of flat painted signs.
Yeah, and I don't see a drawback to it.
The thing is though, like, okay, like some of those buildings are all different down there.
If you don't wanna put the money into doing a nice wall sign, do a window sign, do another kind of sign, but.
No, I know, but I'm saying like, there's a couple buildings down there where you could paint something on there and it'd look really cool. And we just took those out.
That would be a different kind of sign though, wouldn't it, if you painted directly on the building?
Actually, I'm trying to remember, I know
Painted.
it said that they have to be designed or created by a professional or something. I think there's enough language in there that it would be difficult to get
Do
it
it painted.
painted.
I know, but you know the signs I'm talking about though, like if a
Oh.
professional sign company came in and, I mean, Short North has several of them where they've painted something on there. I mean, different things. Not that I want Johnstown to look like Columbus. Don't go off on that tangent on me, but there's some
minutes.
Utica. Utica has some cool painted signs, murals, things like that. Like it's possible to have them.
Well, and I think
Follow
that,
my train of thought.
I don't want to alien out creativity, but we want to alienate.
things
Seems
like,
like a design
so things like murals, I think nothing
I
that we're
like
proposing
the
here would
1 inch
limit
letters
that in any
versus the
way that
1
they're
inch
not already
sign.
limited.
Yeah.
Murals, now that doesn't.
New Albany has some painted
We can
signs
have
over
it
there.
right
Fox
here.
in the Snow's painted on.
It's easy. I don't wanna belabor the.
Unless you knew what
the
Fox in the
weeds
Snow
with
was,
signs
you'd
too
never
much,
know it was
but
Fox in the
that
Snow.
seems
It's
like
just a
it's
fox
organic.
with a snowball, which is cool. But if you're from out of town, you have no idea what that is. Cool restaurant, but cool sign too. So, anyways, we are getting off on that tangent, and I knew we would do it. The only thing that I had in this sign code, on C all the way down at the bottom, where it talks about the base signs.
Oh, yes.
On C there, should we set a max height for the base? Because you could get a sign where the base is like,
Thinking outside the box.
so I think we have a max height for monument signs,
Yeah.
but you could get the base being 75% of that. So should we set a percentage of the base? I do like that it says it has to go all the way to the ground because,
Yeah. I'm trying to think now.
and they're always gonna start all the way at the ground and then erosion's gonna cause them to have
Of
a
course,
6-inch
yeah.
gap. But
I don't know that it's I mean, you can certainly set one if you want, I'm not trying to stop you from doing that. I don't know if it's necessary though, because generally, because there's a maximum height for those
Okay.
signs
they
and that sort of
don't
thing.
eat up-
No one's gonna wanna eat up their maximum allowable height with unnecessary.
No, you just want to make sure they're proportionate, and that's what's up for interpretation. And I didn't know if that's something that design review should look at amending. We're gonna throw all the design review stuff on because
I'll leave
Heather's
that,
here.
I'll leave that up to you. If you wanna include that as a
But-
recommendation, feel free.
I think we should look at a percentage because you don't want to have too much bass. The other, unless you're listening to music. But anyways, so on the base signs, the other thing I like on here, so it says that it needs to be certain material. But I think we should just stick to brick or stone because if it's wood, it's gonna rot. If it's stucco, it's gonna freeze and crack.
Are you still referring to subsection C there? Sorry.
I don't think it's in C. I don't have it in front of me, but I know it's in that
You
section
with monuments still?
with the monument signs. Yeah.
Doesn't it say that?
So it says something in there to the effect of,
Shall be designed and constructed so as to be compatible with the design and materials of the structure with which the sign is associated.
yeah. So I just want to make sure that it's not a substance that's going to rot or look bad when they move out and don't take care of it for 6 months.
We're gonna have specific language from you to get this in there.
It probably is in the maintenance code, but I mean, why set yourself
In all
up for that?
honesty, anytime you're gonna have a sign with any sort of lighting with it and it has electrical associated, it's gonna have a concrete base. So maybe like some sort of odd like wood cladding or something like that, but it won't be solely constructed out of wood.
I mean, I would assume most people are going to do brick or stone just because of.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe Reynoldsburg did this. I know Reynoldsburg down 40. They had a maximum height for all the monument signs. They made all the signs go to like 4 feet. I've seen them do it there. I think Westerville, some other cities
Yeah, it's
have
pretty
done it. They all end up being brick, and I didn't know if that's something that we need to write into our code to say brick or stone, or if they're just going to end up that way. I'm
mean,
agreeable for either.
That's completely up to you all. I would recommend, because we're trying to be very, very precise on this and not like stay very minimal changes. I think that's a great thing to bring up as part of the design.
Okay.
Or like the overlay, whatever it's gonna ultimately end up being called.
Yeah.
With the design guidelines for the city, I think that's something that would absolutely be applicable
Okay.
there, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should just because.
And I say that, Ryan, because we're gonna have a bigger conversation about signs, we're gonna have to.
Yeah, no, I'm
So-
good with it. I want a substance that's going to hold up and not rot or crack or freeze or, get dented up. So, all right.
A lot of monument signs up in Rubio.
Yeah, we do. Those are all granite. Steve, do you have anything on this?
No,
Okay, Jesse, anything else on this? So Jesse wanted to add
1 inch on the letters.
1 inch on the letters. Okay. Trevor, do you think that's going to get to where we want to be, or do you think we can do better to get us to where we want to be? To put some language in there today?
I don't know, because I think there's always kind of a calibration period after you adopt some new code. You almost need to let 1 or 2 things come through and really see, because you think you're endlessly creative when you're writing these codes, but people always find a way to, come up with some
Well,
scenarios you never even
it's
thought
true
of.
because in the 5 years I've been on here, we've amended this thing like every
Yeah.
3 months. So, I mean, it's true. Like we need to get an end all be all, and then
I
they'll
think
figure a way
I think
around
this
it.
is a step in the right direction to add that, because if nothing else, it's expressing the intent that you guys are going after higher quality signs, whether that be channel lettering that's
agree with
that thickness, or just overall signage that's not just an acrylic panel that's printed or whatever and
Yeah.
screwed onto a building. I think that's
We
certainly
added
a
on
way to
page
get
what?
off in that right direction, yeah.
So it's
Okay.
gonna be,
Well, that'll get us down the road until we think of something better.
Number 6 on the wall signs, so it'd be added right
Number
here.
6 on wall signs.
No, number 5 on wall signs, I'm sorry. It's cross over the page, so it'd be number 5 on wall signs.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Anything else from our commissioners before I open up for the public? All right. We'll go ahead and open the public comment on the signage on the wall signs. We'll hear Mr. Marvin Block.
This is for the future, but I'd like to see this panel create some kind of mechanism to stop what Kroger's done out there, or make it when they divide that up, these people coming in here individually and have to fight the zoning board for these signs, actually go on the property owner. He's renting the signs, renting the buildings out, he's dividing them up. Did they ever come and get permission to divide that building up and put all those signs up?
That I don't know.
That's something I think should be considered. And as far as your signs downtown, if you'd have your, board get up like 3 to 4 different flavors, and when they come in and want a sign downtown, say, this is what you get. You got 4 choices. If you don't like any of those, don't put any sign up.
That's a good recommendation. I like that idea.
I want to try to memorialize everything into code as much as we can. And I mean, ultimately, that's why you have a board.
Something to think
But
about putting into the code.
That would fit, we could fit that into, if we do an update on like the design review standards in the downtown, it would fit well there, I think.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I don't think we're doing a complete overhaul tonight, but I do like that idea.
all right, any other public comment?
Make a note.
Chip, if you could come up here,
You gotta remember those buildings downtown, some of them are actually condos. So like my building, I don't own where the chiropractor is.
oh, it's up
So,
top.
I own above the chiropractor.
And he owns part of the first floor.
Oh,
but
Oh, that's right, the
there's
You know what I
chiropractor's
mean?
on
So
the-
like,
yeah.
you have to remember that when you guys go to making it the building, because the building is condoed out in some of them. So that's a tough one.
So does that count against his square footage that he
You know,
can put
yeah,
up by
exactly, right.
his
Does he
place?
count against my square footage, and do I count against his
Yeah.
square footage? That's
See how hard this is.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's something that came to my mind as soon as you said it. I was like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I have to think about that. Make your decision.
That's the trouble with signage, just when we think we have it.
Because if you,
There's another,
And he'd have space.
we'll get to you, Dave.
how mine is actually broke up.
I think it looks like it's got
Bottom?
different
Hang
material
on,
the
hang on a
front.
second. We have a member of the public up here, real quick.
So how mine is actually broke up is the bottom and the top on my side is one condo.
Okay.
And then as you go up the stairs, the other side is its own condo. That's how I pay taxes. This side is its own condo, but the downstairs and the upstairs is its own condo also. So,
Yeah, and you guys have ownership, not renting.
right. I have
Yeah, that's what
ownership
makes
over.
it tougher.
Yeah, I have ownership over one plot and then ownership over this other plot, and then
Yeah.
they own the spot underneath me. And I don't know how many of those buildings are broke up like that. So just
Yeah, there's at least 4 of them that way.
yeah. So that's just something to think
Yeah.
about when you guys.
No, that's good stuff. Yeah,
Actually,
we
I
probably
think
wouldn't have thought about
it
that.
works out though, kind of, because if that frontage is owned by somebody else, that makes it easy to determine that there's 2
is one
different
unit, that's another unit.
places on this one, you know?
It does, but if Mr. Cox splits his up into 4 units in there,
Mine is actually, so I have the unit above the chiropractor, which is its own unit, and
Yeah.
then my one on the other side is its own unit, and then downstairs is a unit.
so you have a good frontage like I was talking about. If you had a really cool looking painted sign on that,
No,
that
I
would-
mean, let's see what that guy wants to put in. I mean,
Yeah.
what sign he wants to put up.
Some kids down there.
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
That's just something I wanted to bring up.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one other member of public comment. Yep.
As written, is this something you could just put in an exception of the downtown area, considering the conversations around the historical district? At least then 97% of the city's covered, and
That's what I'm
and then
thinking.
still variance off of the downtown area per application.
Yes. Yeah, that's a conversation I think needs to happen. Let the record reflect Mr. Dave Seelan.
Right.
There's an E on the end, right? All right.
Can I make a motion?
Yes. Any other public comment? All right, we'll close public comment. Is there a motion on the table?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the changes as written with one additional edit to add in sub-item 5 under the wall signs for 1 inch minimum depth of lettering,
And to adjust the 1.5.
and to make Sean's
We have to
adjustment.
write that in.
Yeah, just flop it.
Can we word that better for Teresa?
To adjust the mathematical error.
I can give you the
And fix the
exact.
mathematical error referred to.
So it should be
on record.
reflective of linear footage divided by 1.5 and not 1.5 divided by the linear feet.
Yeah. All right. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Roll call, please.
Jesse Cobble,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Steve Dyer.
Yes.
All right.
Three
That
votes
brings
and we're
us-
getting everything through.
That brings us to our zoning inspector report. And Terry, if you have anything you'd like to come up and say, now's your time. Now's your time to shine. Thank you for waiting.
Zoning nerd.
Oh, just as submitted.
All right. Have you seen an uptick in permits with the weather getting better?
It's steady,
Is it?
steady, but, like Sean said, these solar panels that are coming in, we're getting at least one a month. So I'm gonna have to get some coaching from Sean on the dialogue when those
Yeah.
people call in and say, hey, my neighbor just got his last month. You're telling me I can't get one?
What did I saw that was on design review tonight? What did they decide on that?
So design review is recommending to council for the moment to not allow for solar panels to be installed until we have the opportunity to get some regulations put in place for those particular solar panels. Hopefully by year end, we'll have something to look at. So that's going to go to council. The reason I went to them and not to you all is it's in 1187, which is their design review. It's under section C, minor changes. Okay. So that's why I went to them. They're making the recommendation to council.
Okay.
And then council will then act as they see fit. They could say, nope, we're gonna leave it in there. They could say, yep, we agree, we're gonna go ahead and change it. So really, it'll be whatever they say. And as far as coaching for Terry, what I will say, this is what I always do, and say, we are not the interpreters necessarily. We take the ordinances that we are given by council, and then we are tasked with enforcing them.
Yeah.
So for Terry's point, whenever they call up, say, this is the instruction that my bosses, thus council, have given me, and this is the action that I'm taking. If you don't like it, you can ask for them to change it, ask for the appeal process. There's all those things put in place that they can go through. So it defends us a little bit. It throws more of the weight on council, but ultimately, those are the ones that make the rules. We're just here to basically
We're a
look at it.
quasi judicial board.
That's it. And that's all staff is. They always ask for an opinion. What do you think this will do? And I always tell Terry, we don't have an opinion. We say the board has an opinion. They'll take the facts and the determination that are there, and then they'll make a recommendation, or they'll make a determination, whatever they see fit, so.
All right.
I do have one question about that. So the code went through design review board to get recommended to council? Is that what I heard?
There were no proposed changes. It was simply an opportunity for the design review board to evaluate how they wanted to approach dealing with solar panels. There was no code or anything reviewed or adopted.
Yeah, any board can make a recommendation to council. It's just council's determination after that.
I could have taken it right to council, but I thought they would have asked what the design review board thought on it, since it's their wheelhouse, and I wanted to make sure that they had.
So it's a code prohibiting solar panels? Is that basically?
Yeah, it'll be written into the design where it's not permitted. We'll figure it out.
I think
whatever
to clarify, there's basically.
I guess where I'm coming from is I thought the charter, anything like land use stuff has to come through this board.
Keep in mind, there was no ordinance heard. So any proposed regulation that the DRB reviews will still have to, I would recommend come through this board before it goes to council.
Right.
Nothing was presented tonight. There's been no code written.
But I can't go directly to council either, because the charter says all the land use stuff has to come to us. Is my understanding of it. It's pretty.
Once we get something drafted, we'll be able to see if it's gonna be a reflection of the ordinance change or something like that, so.
Yeah.
We gotta draft
Not
it
a big
first.
deal, but so take a look at that that provision in the charter, maybe.
Well, and yeah, we'll dissect it.
All right. Is there any public comment on the inspector's report?
Yeah, idea for Sean and Terry. Federal government approves $275 million for solar panels. Tesla's coming out with one that's half the size and looks like it's.
Yeah, I saw that.
This year.
Yeah.
So tell them the holder holds his weight.
And
It doesn't say that in the code, so I will not say that.
Yeah.
But I think it's an excellent idea. I will say whatever the code says.
I've seen
I'm
it.
a great
It looks-
copy and paste
it looks
guy. and
more
say-
like a terracotta tile.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
not
mean,
that
if you
bad
tell-
looking.
If you just tell the public, have you seen the new ones that's coming out?
And I don't know if council will like those or not, so I will defer to whatever they tell me. to
There's
do.
at least one house that'll look right on. If they look like a terracotta tile.
True, yeah.
So, all
I
right.
like it.
Any other further public comment? Anything else in other business? Staff, anything else coming up at all that we should be aware of? All right.
World.
Anything else from the public? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Job done.